Yo, what's up? It's your boy E.T. Welcome to another edition of M.A.S.S Impact, the educational podcast. Now, look, the reason why I started this, I truly believe that education is the way to close the gap, the wealth gap, the digital divide gap, the opportunity gap. Look, the American dream gap. Can I be honest? Everybody's not experiencing the American dream in the way it's supposed to be experienced. So the reason why we started the M.A.S.S Impact, the educational podcast, is to close that gap. Now look, M.A.S.S is simple. It means motivate, actionable steps, which means what? We're going to give you strategies every week. So we're not just going to motivate you and inspire you, which is important, but we're going to give you actionable steps. And look, it's a support system, y'all. Thus M.A.S.S. It's your boy E.T. Now you know. Let's go. What are some of the perks that you see of being able to stay in that leadership position for some time, so that as superintendents are listening and other leaders who are making these decisions can hear how beneficial it is to have a school leader in for a long period of time?
Yeah. So I think one of them is just having unfinished business. I took this to, as you guys remember, if you remember, I went to Vashon as a student, and I thought this was the most amazing place in the world. I didn't know of any of the negative stigmatisms that came with it. And so I want to see it through to be the place I thought it was. So that's one thing. One of the best benefits, however, though, is seeing families come through, seeing parents who say, like, you did an amazing job with my first child. I got two more coming, and knowing that you're going to have that connection with that family for forever because of the time at Vashon. The other thing is I got some amazing staff members that are just like, you can't leave. Like, we're here because you're here. Stay. And when you start to see those type of staff members, having that same principal and that same leader keeps those same teachers around as well.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. I was telling the team, they are on Michigan, or let's say they're on Midwest schedule. So they're thinking kids are going back late August, early September. And I let them know that, in the South, they're back Monday, what I'm saying? They're back in school, in the beginning of August, they're back, and so I know we talked about summer slide recently, but now we're back, all hands, on deck. Before we pass it around, Brenda, for you, what does that mean when we talk about increasing literacy for our young people? When we talk about, I always talk about, for me, one of the connections with reading, is becoming a critical thinker. I think it's important not just to be a good reader, but to be able to comprehend, like understand what you're reading and then apply it. Like, what's the connection in real life? Like, I was just reading Frederick Douglass' work, and I was just like, wow, here's a person that was able to purchase his own freedom, and I was like, yo, that's great. But what does that mean in 2022? Like, how do I apply you being able to buy your own freedom in a time where, like it's unprecedented. Like, it's not possible. He pulled off. So I'm like, Eric, in 2022, what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for the people you work with? So for you, as we're going back into the schools, what would you say to our educators about, all hands on deck and helping our babies get to the next level in literacy?
Yeah, I think you said it. You talked kind of about past tense, but right now, reading is freedom. You have the freedom to choose who and how you want to live through reading, and that's in any subject area, and it opens so many doors for our kids. It opens the door for them to score high on the ACT and get in the college they want to go to a trade school. You have to read those manuals. I try myself all the time to figure it out, and I can read, and it's difficult. So the importance of having that tool just provides a lot of freedom for our children and just in life in general.
Yeah, Vondell, of course, you just had Larry Miller in the building, and you did something unique in that you didn't just ask him to come and speak and share, how he took the Jordan brand from 100 mil, to what, a billion? Like, well, I don't know how.
5 billion.
Yeah, 5 billion. So I didn't know if I got that number right. 5 billion. And so that alone was phenomenal. But you did something unique. You had him bring his newly released book, Jump. And I thought the cover of the book was phenomenal. So for all of you guys out there that want kids to be readers, make it visually attractive, right? But it was the Jump, right? In the MJ red, right? In the MJ red. There we go, in the MJ red. But what I love is the sneakers on the wires, right? The sneakers, right? And that is symbolic, in the urban community, right? That has a meaning to it. And I love it because he made that connection. Like he allowed kids to see the J's, which they are attracted to, and then the symbolism of shoes hanging on a wire, right? And so now a kid who's from the urban community is looking at that like, yo, I want to know, like, what's this book about? So I think for those of us who are champions of literacy, we have to make sure that we're not just on the ideology aspect of it, the pedagogy. But we also have to make sure from a practical standpoint, we make it appealing, we make it attractive, right? Why, Vondell, the 100 mil to 5 billion content was enough? Like, why did you think it was so important to get the book in the hands of our babies?
It was something that I was going down, and Katie talks about it all the time. Like, they have to be able to see themselves inside of these, right? So I think relevancy is really important. So using something that's unique to urban America, and not just that. Like, Michael Jordan played for Chicago Bulls. This is the lane he grew his brand. It started right here. And to have somebody like Larry Miller, because when you see Larry Miller, a lot of people don't realize you are seeing Michael Jordan. This is literally the president and the founding chairman of his brand. So I figured that it was really important to connect the dots, not just to have him come share his powerful story in the book, but to get somebody to sponsor. And so I reached out, made the connection, and shout out William Blair, who sponsored 400 books to make sure that they were actually there at the conference. We have any more books left. All of the books are gone. And the powerful thing was they had a chance to see and hear the author, as well as his daughter, who's the co-author, talk about the inspiration of why the story was really important to get in this text. So now you see the author, we have the book, and it's relevant, so I can make a connection. And it's so many people to say, oh, I already finished the book. It was so good, Mr. Singleton. Yeah. Like, that's the power. So now we putting ourselves in the story. So now we creating more authors. It's going to be kids not just read the book and know the story, but now to write their own story in their own book. And that to me is just powerful.
So how do you re-engage, parents or guardians who are not as involved as we would like them to be as administrators or educators?
That's a perfect question. So this is a tactic that is very, very successful, especially if you have the resources to do it. Home visits are key. Home visits. Yeah. I mean, well, I've showed it to, man, listen, I've showed it to some family homes, have powwows, everybody crying, I'm crying. We didn't have the whole situation. I've been in a situation like E.T. or Dr. Thomas, where, I get young people to close off my back. So a lot of times this lapel pin, I keep about 100 of these. And young people I meet walking up and down the hall, just chopping it up with them. I see someone doing next and I say, hey, look, this is from me to you. It's a gold standard. You keep that. And kids come to me, I still got my pen, Doc. I still got my pen. I said, and parents say, where you get that from? Well, Doc Towns gave me. Then it starts a conversation. Whatever that conversation starter is, you have to ignite the schema of that young person and that parent. So home visits have been a major, major cheat code for a lot of the execution of educational leadership for me. And you got to take the jacket off sometimes. You got to unbutton that, let that tie down, unbutton that collar, and walk into the home. And parents will invite you. You don't just pop up now. You got to plan it. But they will invite you in, man. And then when they see that level of support, for someone said, man, you're the high school principal. Or, man, you're the superintendent. What are you? I'm like, hey, yeah, I didn't see you. You didn't see you the super. I was looking for you, though. Mm-hmm. And then also showing up in place of, it's not a competition. It's letting the parents know, look, I got your back. I know you can't make it to the game, but I'm there. And guess what? Your baby put up 30 points. when we shouting them out next week. It's really celebrating. Every young person in that schoolhouse is important. Every family is important. Everyone have different levels of resources. The goal is to meet them where they are and level them up. I said it previously. I always say it, and we talk about it. You set the bar, you meet the bar, you exceed the bar, then you raise that bar, and you repeat, and that's how you get to the level of execution that you want.
I love it.
I love it.
And keep reaching out too. Like you're mentioning, Vandale, those ones that maybe aren't as involved. It may be because they don't have that level of trust you're talking about. And so we have to not give up on them and keep reaching out. So I had a student a few years ago that was a senior, and I had been continually calling home and not getting an answer, but I left her a message finally letting his mom know that I was trying to help him apply for college. And so I wanted to get some insight from her. And she called me back crying and said, I haven't always gotten positive phone calls from the school. She was just nervous seeing like the school number calling. And she said, you left me a message saying you're helping him apply for college. I'm so excited. She was just really, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm calling for. Like he wants to go to college next year. I want to make this happen. Let's work together and develop this relationship with a family where I could help support that. But I did have to call several times because she didn't have that previous level of trust to answer my phone call. And so I think she also was touched by that. I'm not going to give up until we get in contact so we can work together for the best way to support the kids.
If you keep calling, especially for something negative, you're going to get blocked. And then you're going to say, hey, out of the parent, don't pick up. I can't get in contact with. That's going to block your number. You keep calling for something negative.
So I just have a question for Jocelyn. Like, what advice do you have for teachers now as we're like approaching the school year, taking a look at text, and really like thinking about LaShawna's experience all the way in high school? So how can teachers disrupt that so that all children have an experience where they can maybe see themselves in their books throughout the course of the year?
And sooner, right? Sooner than high school, right? That's our goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also in high school as well.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, that is definitely the goal, right? Because my husband had a very similar experience where he was just kind of like, I'm reading all these books, and it's not that they're not good books, but it's kind of like, why am I reading this? Right. And so I tried to always give very simple, actionable steps, right? Because as educators, we have a million things going on, and we've got all these other things, right? Parent communication and making sure that we're developing the relationships with our students. And we do want to make sure that we are aware of what our curriculum says. But it is important that like we said, that we're allowing our students to see themselves represented in the classroom in general. So when teachers are thinking about disrupting kind of this very same narrative, I believe that it starts with reflection. So first, I guess the first thing is auditing your classroom library. Like, what do I even have in here? And I wanted to kind of also speak to LaShawna's point about how she was reading these books in English, but how much more impactful would it have been in your experience to have been able to see yourself in texts across disciplines, right? So we often only think about English language arts when we think about books, but there are reading materials in every single subject. So for teachers to first, reflect and challenge themselves and say, how am I making sure that I have these windows, mirrors, maps, sliding glass doors in my math classroom, right? Whether it's posters that are on the wall that talk about different mathematicians that are from across the world, or if it's in a science class where we're talking about different scientists or theories or all of this, how are we bringing in people from all across? And then the other thing is to ask 3 anchor questions. So a lot of the actionable steps that I recommend are based on the works of Zaretta Hammond, right? Dr. Goldie Muhammad, Dr. Oh Lord, see, here I am blanking out with these. It's the 5 children brain that Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings, right? So I've kind of taken all of that research and distilled it down into 3 anchor questions. And those questions are, what might my students learn about themselves? What might my students learn about their peers? And what might my students learn about the world around them? So that's a very good way to start to ask yourself as you're thinking about the resources that you're bringing into the classroom. Because a lot of times teachers say, oh, well, this text is not diverse. Okay, so then what questions can you be asking your students so that they can also think about that? Hey, who's missing from this text? What story is not being represented, right? So it's like, well, I don't have money to buy new books. Okay, so let's take the books that we have. And if we're talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Okay, when is this story taking place? Who are the main characters? What voices are being missing because the main characters only look like one thing or only represent one gender identity or one particular age group or whatever. So that's what I would say as far as disrupting.
So talk to me though, about just being a kid in Chicago. What are the things that outside of basketball, that kind of grab your attention, and how were you able to, despite the things that grab your attention through mentorship, how were you able to shift, or maybe not shift, maybe you stay focused from the beginning, but talk to other young people about being in an environment and not letting that environment control you, but using the environment to take you to that next level.
So throughout my life, I was blessed. We weren't blessed with money by far. We weren't wealthy. We weren't rich at all. But I was blessed with two amazing parents who raised me in a way to become a man of honor, a man of integrity, a man of discipline, and a man of going after whatever it is that you want, no matter how hard how hard it is. And so my parents surrounded me with great mentors. When I was 5 years old, they put me in martial arts. My kung fu teacher taught me the importance of discipline, the importance of knowing how to protect yourself, but also knowing how to use your body as a weapon, but limiting that weapon when not necessary. Fighting is not always the first answer. Sometimes you can talk yourself out of a situation, but it is important to learn how to protect yourself. Basketball. My parents put me in basketball when I was 7 or 8 years old with AAU programs. My coach, my basketball coach, Coach Davis, he taught me the importance of being fearless and not letting fear hold you back from becoming the best version of yourself. So I was blessed to have people around me that kept me in line, kept me in check and going forward towards my goals and going forward to becoming the best version of myself. But in terms of, you talked about staying focused and getting back into, not letting those things distract you. Honestly, it's tough in the city because they're in the midst of all this positivity. The only thing that's talked about the most is negative. They shine the light on all the negative situations, all the gun violence, all the kids who are causing trouble. And so for that, it's honestly disheartening, right? At times I think to myself, man, is this really is what I'm doing really worth it if there's still kids out here shooting each other because they don't have any hope? But that also drives me because, again, I'm a selfless person. I want to see others succeed. And so seeing that there's still a need that needs to be there's still a need that needs to be filled, that's what drives me to continue doing the work that I'm doing every single day. But I mean, it does get tough. And as we've seen over the last couple months, we've seen all this violence. We've heard all these discussions about how they even talk about our generation negatively all the time. And so having that being bombarded, it is a negative cycle. But at the same time, what helps me is just reminding myself of what my end goal is. And also having those mentors around me that keep me in line. That's what really has kept me focused.
Teachers just need to be human. They need to be allowed to be human, and they need to be allowed to be heard, right? That will attract us with bringing people in and keeping people here. We can all think back to just our lawmakers right now and some of the policies that teachers are having to deal with. And as school leaders, how can we cover our teachers and protect them from that and be the liaison? We must do what we have to do. We have to follow policy and state statutes and just incoming pressures from just society as a general. But how can school leaders step in and kind of cover our teachers? So one, the ones that we have now, continue to stay. And two, so that we can let a newcomer come in like, hey, here's how I am as a leader. And people must really buy into the heart of the leader nowadays. Being a school principal is not going to help you keep qualified people, right? You have to be a leader. You have to be someone that can show empathy with your teacher, someone that can meet them where they are and be transparent. Even if I don't have all of the resources, what I do have is some of the same values as you.
Yeah, that's good. Dr. Holloway, one of the things I was thinking about, even in the NFL and the NBA, You know, there are kids that don't want to play for the Lions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't want to, like, you excited about going to the NFL, but you like, man, I don't know if I want to play with the Lions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they've been rebuilding. Somebody hit me up, y'all rebuilding. I said, bro, we've been rebuilding. They building the streets. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the streets always under construction. Like, the state is always under construction. So they're just kids that just lose their, you know, that passion when you got to come play and you 0-16. You know, you lose that. So to your point, yes, 1000%. We need to not just assume people understand the teaching career.
Correct.
And we really do need to show all the aspects. Now, I'll be honest, I had something that I was going to say, I'm going to save it. But what you sparked, though, when you said policy, I don't think enough educators who are politically savvy run for office. You know, and we have a lot of people who are in political seats making decisions for education who have not been on the teaching side. You know, we've had people who've been on the business side of education, you know, who understand charter and public, and, you know, they know economically you're good. They know economically how to make it happen, but they don't know practically how to make it happen. I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to encourage more of our teachers to run for offices, and they need to write policy that is favorable for teachers that show up and go to work, favorable for getting us a raise, you know, favorable, you know, for protecting our teachers and making sure that, I think that's another thing. Like, you see all these shootings. Yeah. There's a lot of teachers is like, yo, I don't want to be in a place where
I do think that is, impactful.
Yeah, they want to be a place where it's safe.
Yeah.
You know? And there are places in our country that are safe. There are places that they have decided to make safety a priority, and you just can't run up in there without consequences. Our schools need to create policy that creates safety, where our schools are like Fort Knox. We got on the outside of them, we got people on the inside of them, and you can't get in, because I'm noticing that the people that are creating these challenges for our country, they're coming into empty schools. They're not being met with resistance.
Correct.
You feel me? The grocery store in Buffalo that was shot, like, that person wasn't met with resistance.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and I mean, there was one off-duty police officer, no more there. But I'm saying, when somebody's coming in with an AR-5, like, you need it, that needs to be met with resistance. Yeah. So that's my, you know, take. I don't know, you know, who wants to go next, but I just think there are savvy teacher leaders who could get into politics. And even though I know they would prefer to be in the school building, they could have a greater impact outside. And that's the only reason I left. I love education. Like, I'm still about education. Like, I haven't gone nowhere, but I have a greater impact outside of the school than I did when I was in the school. So I didn't run. Well, I did run, but I ran to get support. I ran like went got my cousins. Like, yo, it's going down. You know what I'm saying? I need all y'all to come support me. And so I went and got all my cousins and said, hey, let's go back in the school district as a group. Let's do the podcast as a group, and let's help, you know, from a different angle.
Man, that's so important, especially, and also along with, you know, encouraging those teachers to do that, amplifying the voices of our parents, right? Especially our parents whose children are going to be hit the worst by this. Letting them know that their voices are worthy just as much as the counterparts, right, who may be creating these laws and policy, and those who are not coming inside of the building. So allowing your parents and working in collaboration with them to also ease some of those burdens. You know, teaching is one of the only professions where job duties are added and not taking off. Like only one of the only professions where each day you have another. Now we have intruder drill training in about an hour, right? Just every day. So now I have teachers who's already stressed about other things, and now it's not even about the pay. We just gave our teachers an 8% raise. We're now the second paid highest district in the region, and that's great for our inner city public school. But teachers are saying, hey, it's beyond that. I need support, and I need resources, and I need people, quite frankly, just to lay off and just trust me as a professional. And that's what it is. That's why people are leaving, because they feel like they can be trusted, and people are going to leave them alone and let them do their jobs in other fields. And that's one of the saddest things I ever heard, that we have come to that. And these are people who really want to remain in our classroom, and people who would not mind coming into our classrooms, but they feel as if the pressure is just too high. So one, as educators, I got to remind them to look beyond that, right? To, of course, keep your why and your what, right? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Where do I want to do it? Remind them of that, and remind them to look past those things, because a kid, interaction with a kid, a joy in the classroom can cause all those things to go to the back of your head. And it's just about creating those experiences more.
Hey, we talk about books around here all the time, but specifically, we're going to talk about UOU.
Yeah.
Exciting book release today. Well, we're recording today. It came out just a couple of days ago. So loving the excitement around it and wanting to talk about it. You know, we want to hear your perspective, Ian, the last week, but also about how we see it playing out in the education space, how it's going to make an impact for kids and families and communities within education.
Yeah, I got to say this, guys. This is deep, right? So Tobe had hit me up, and Toby was like, E, you know, congratulations. You're number one in some categories, number 1 and 2. I was like, okay, that don't make sense, but okay. You know, and so I told Tobe, yeah, we're trying. You know, we're trying to, you know, hit that New York best time sellers list. And he was like, what do you mean trying, E? Like, that don't make sense. What do you mean trying? I thought you execute. And I said, you know what's funny? I can't say that I'm going to execute because unfortunately, when you're talking about the New York Times bestsellers list, there is no concrete algorithm, right? And I think they did this because maybe when they first came out, there were people who were wealthy who would actually write a book and then buy their book in bulk. So the one thing we do know is that it takes a lot of individual sales, right? Mm-hmm. But it's hard to hit a target you can't see. You know, so like we get up in the morning, we're kind of talking about, okay, what do we know? Like, how can we, you know, and the reality is it was like, look, you know, we can talk to the publisher, but the publisher doesn't have like all the insight, all the information. But we can talk to the publisher. There's another whatever. And so I'm telling you, as educators, it's hard to hit a target you can't see.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember those classes that I started doing well in. Believe it or not, it was the classes that had the rubric. It was the classes where the teachers really like identify, you do this, you get a 2.0. You do this, you get a 2.5. You do this, you get a 3.0. You know, and although it was cumbersome, like it was like, man, it's a lot. Actually, I enjoyed it to some extent because at least I knew what the expectations were. They were clearly written out. I could clearly see them. And I had other teachers that, you know, I had a good relationship with, teachers that I had a great rapport with, and then I'll get a paperback. I was like, whoa, like she cool, but man, like one time I got a 3.0, one time I got a 2.2. Like I don't really know what she wants. Like I thought, you know what I'm saying? I thought the rapport, I thought the relationship, like one paper, I think I wrote the same thing on the second paper. But that teacher was kind of like, you know, more of a relational teacher. But while I enjoyed the relationship and I felt better than I felt in the class where I didn't have a relationship with the teacher, but the rubric, it was like I actually could do better in the class with the teacher I didn't really care for because I had some real solid, tangible, here's what you're supposed to do. So I just want to say as it relates to the book to start off, you know, I had this goal of hitting the New York Times bestsellers list, but then figuring out like, yo, I don't know. The publisher doesn't know. The team that I hired, they don't know. Like nobody really knows how to hit it. And it's a little frustrating when you put forth effort, when you're trying and you're working hard not to have a goal. So I want to say to some of our teachers, you have students that are trying, that are putting forth effort, that have a lot of energy, but unfortunately, because you don't operate with a lot of specificity, it makes it challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's like, there's all kinds of research to support that, right? Making sure that our students know what their learning goals are. They can state them back to us. As much as teachers, we don't really love the whole teacher evaluation thing we always have to go through, but those teacher evaluations, they do check in with us that we have to make sure our kids know our learning goals and can repeat them back to us.
Absolutely.
And all the way down to kindergarten. I mean, every grade level, our kindergartner should be able to say, my goal is that I can count by twos to this number, so absolutely, there's so much benefit in making sure
absolutely. And for everybody, it takes the stress off. For clarity. What LaShawn used to say back in the day, I don't even know if she really knew what she was saying. That nothing clarifies like clarity. And nothing clarifies like written down clarity, like objective clarity. Objective clarity. You know what I'm saying? Like rubric clarity. You know what I'm saying? So not even this idea of talking it out, but literally having it on a piece of paper where if I'm not with you and I can't call you or talk to you, it is written down in such a clear format that actually I don't need you. You actually, number two, you actually empower people when it's in writing, because again, they don't need you to the same extent they need you when it's not in writing. They don't have to keep calling you and asking you a million questions. So good. Well, that's for me. I know we're gonna jump into the book, but for me, I think that's a big takeaway as I've been in this book process. Is that we need clarity. We need instructions. We need things in writing. We need to understand. We need to know. What are your expectations today? What am I supposed to be doing tomorrow? What's the ultimate goal? So absolutely.
Welcome back, everybody, to the principal's office, where we review and recap the most impactful points from today's broadcast. But today, there is only one most impactful point. You've heard us talk about it by now. UOU by Eric Thomas is out now everywhere that books are sold. This is a book that you need for your secondary classrooms. This is a book that you need for your staff. This is a book that you need for you. UOU to get this book. This is the first time that E.T. has told his full story from start to where he is today and included every single lesson. It's in the book. The workbooks are included in here for you to take the principles and apply them into your life. Everything that you need is in this book, and you owe it to yourself to grab a copy for yourself, for your students, for the parents, for the staff, everybody that you can think of. This is a game changer. So do me a favor, go to uoubook.com. That's uoubook.com and get a copy right now. And Von Dale said that the first 10 people to email him, they're going to get a copy for free. So uoubook.com, or just email Von Dale if you think you're quick enough. Grab your copy of UOU today. That's it. That's all. Says the clock on the wall. We will see you on the next episode of Mass Impact, the Education Podcast.